Good morning. We are so glad that you are joining us here on the Worlds of Wow Facebook Live. Here again with Kevin Cravens, our creative director at Worlds of Wow. And today we're talking all things classrooms and large group rooms and the designs of both, and ideas and thoughts. And quite frankly, there's all kind of different ideas for churches on how to approach that, whether you're a new church, whether you're an established church, maybe you are wanting to change your design. So we're going to talk today about some ideas, some principles, things that we've learned along the way. Of course, Kevin is the expert, been doing this for many, many, many years and has transformed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of spaces. So without further ado, Kevin, I'll let you tee up what you're going to be doing today, and then we'll be talking throughout this Facebook Live. Kevin, what do you got?
All right, sounds good. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Todd. So yeah, I want to talk classrooms and large group rooms. So we actually had a client send in some pictures of some of their classrooms and just kind of want to talk some ideas. So my focus a little bit more on classrooms just in terms of what we're showing, but there's a lot of overlap, and I think there's a lot of good things to talk about. So I'm going to pull some stuff up just to get us started. All right, there we go. So I just put together a quick little elevation of a classroom, and then actually have a picture of a classroom of a client we're working with right now. And it's a little on the smaller side, but they had done some renovations and put in new carpet, and repainted the walls. And so now we're working together to kind of think about what the classrooms could look like. So classrooms, large group rooms are interesting, right? So if you've been following the series, we started off with almost like if you were a new visitor walking in to your church building, right? We started with a check-in space. We went through the hallways, and now we're in the classrooms and the large group rooms, right? And so I think for us, we know what we see a lot, and I think what we like to do is typically there's a finite number of budget dollars, right? And so it's understanding what's the best way to address your whole space with the budget dollars we have. And so for us, a lot of times it's focusing a lot of those budget dollars in the check-in area, just because that's typically the highest impact point, right? That's where you're going to have the most eyes, whether it's mom and dad, it's the kiddos, it's people volunteering, and it's just people walking by. That's where you're going to get a lot of excitement from, right? And then just working in the hallways to kind of carry that theme into the space. And then hallways or classrooms in particular, it might be a spot where, maybe not going to focus so many of the budget dollars, but still want to make sure it's working with the overall look and feel that we've established, right? You don't want mom and dad to drop their kiddos off in the classroom, walking through all this great area, and then it looks like the classroom is an afterthought, right? So, I was kind of thinking through just kind of how to boil this down, and I was thinking some do's and some don'ts for the classroom, and Todd had some good input as well, so I might have you chime in on some of this, but I'm just going to make a list real fast. And so I think the biggest thing to understand is understand the function of the space. And Todd and I were talking beforehand a little bit. So Todd, I'm going to write this out, but you want to talk about that a little bit and your thoughts on that?
Kevin, I was actually messaging somebody. Would you say that again? I'm sorry.
Oh, so number one is understand the function of the space. And so beforehand, before this, we were talking, and you had, I think, some great thoughts about, how people approach large group rooms and classrooms. And I think maybe in particular, I think a big discussion that's had a lot of times is, these spaces being multi-use.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. And quite frankly, we get asked that question a lot of if it is, hey, we have this space, but adults use it, and teenagers, and as well as kids. And I always go back to the why, like what's the intention of the design? One of the things that we've learned is that one of the strongest growth engines of a church is kids ministry. So if you look at your space through that lens, we need to really evaluate, okay, all right, how can we make a space that's really designed for kids, to have activities, for playful environments. It's early, sorry, just starting to drink my coffee. But having the a space that's truly a playful environment, and if our why is to have that, and we understand that some of the greatest evangelists that we have in churches are kids, then let's create spaces for them to invite their friends. So I think if we go and we look at it through that lens, and we address that why, then I think that we can, look at, okay, how do we make a multi-use space that's really geared towards answering that question?
Yeah, so I think, if part of the function of the space, a classroom, large group room, is that it needs to be multi-use, I think we have some pretty strong opinions about this. Sometimes, and increasingly, we're kind of seeing that the space needs to be multi-use, and so the conversation centers around the idea that it needs to be appealing for the adults, needs to be appealing for the older groups meeting in that space. And you might say, man, we're a little biased in all of this, but if I'm dropping my kiddo off in a space that's maybe appealing to mom and dad, am I setting up their time there to be one where their imaginations are activated, where they feel like they can be a kid, they feel like they don't have to be so careful because they might get a stain or a smudge on something, or might get in trouble for being a kid, right? And so making it appealing for kids doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be obnoxious looking, doesn't mean it has to look like a confetti bomb went off in the room, right? It can still be sophisticated but still have that playful element. And so we're pretty passionate about, I think especially in this day and age and with everything going on, I think everybody can use a little fun and a little joy. And I think I push back on the idea that multi-use means it has to be sterile, and it has to be appealing just to mom and dad. I think mom and dad and the adults would be okay with a little bit of color and a little bit of energy and a little bit of inspiration, especially with everything going on right now. So yeah, I think multi-use space, that's super important. I would say too, if we're talking classrooms, understanding the function a lot of times. Sometimes we work with clients, they want to focus a lot of the budget dollars, a lot of the theming in the classrooms, but the classrooms typically are where the kids are going to spend the bulk of their time. And so, if you think about what needs to go on, a lot of times there's an activity, there's a lesson, there's maybe some quiet time, and just a few other things going on. And so just with that in mind, these are the spaces where we want to create an environment that allows kids to really focus. Right. And so this might be the space, for that reason too, that we might kind of scale back what's going on in here. Right. We want to be able the kids to kind of settle and focus a little bit. Right. So if I understand the function of the space, this is typically where the lessons are going to happen. Right. Then number two, a do would be create a focal point. And this kind of dovetails off the first point. And then, but kind of with that in mind, I was going to draw out some things just to show, don't make it so small. Don't make it so small it gets lost. Let me show you this real fast. So I'm going to show a few examples right here. So this is a classroom for one of my favorite projects we did ever. And I think this would be an example of that sophisticated but playful look that obviously we got all the furniture in here and all the baby stuff, but this would could function as a multi-purpose room. And this church actually has a lot of rooms like this and does use their kids space design like this for adult groups as well, right? But this would be an example of a focal wall, right? Typically, a lot of times that focal wall is going to be, again, you're always looking for that impact. For a lot of times, it's the opposite of the door, so mom and dad get their eyes on it too. So they can get excited about that as well. Kids will feel more comfortable because they're going to see something in there. Sometimes that can't happen, but that's ideal, right? But this works really well because this looks like a wall, and you walk in here, it's not overwhelming, but it makes a pretty big, bold statement, right? And so what we see sometimes, just looking at some of what's been done and maybe what some other companies do, and sometimes what we're asked to do is it might be, and we don't have a lot of budget dollars, but we want a lot of stuff in this room, so everything has to be kind of small. So we might do that shine bright and big, you know, we have to keep it small just to fit with the budget, but we're going to spread it out to try and fill up that wall a little bit, right? And you can kind of see right here, kind of took that, it has to be smaller, spread it all out. Man, there's nothing exciting about that. That's not a focal wall. Everything gets kind of lost and you lose the impact, right? So that's something that can happen quite a bit. Sometimes it's, well, we can't do the whole wall, so let's kind of do something in the middle. But again, because of budget, it kind of has to be kind of small. And so, again, if I'm a kid walking in here, is that going to have the impact that you want it to have, right? And typically, I would say no, right? I mean, you're almost better a lot of times, at the very least, having a focal wall color. You just got to ask yourself that question of do we have the budget dollars to do something impactful on this focal, right? Now, it doesn't have to mean all the time, like, we're going to go floor to ceiling, or going to go all the way across and big. I'd say something we do a lot of times, if we're taking this focal wall, we might kind of do almost a vignette on that wall, right? So I could take that and do that. And now all of a sudden, I haven't eaten up that whole wall space. It's not overwhelming, but it does look like a focal point, right? If I walk into that room and my eyes are focused there, that statement that you want to communicate is loud and clear without being overwhelming, right? What do you think about that, Todd?
Yeah, I like that, Kevin. I think, again, you brought up a great point, and kids spend a lot of time in their classrooms. Now, some churches, they do it, well, the younger kids spend time in their classrooms. Older kids might be more, large group and then small group in a big room.
Sure.
But for classrooms, I think, again, when you look at and you think through the lens of the first-time visitor, and you think through creating a playful environment, and you think through something that's warm and inviting, one of the first questions that parents ask kids when they leave the church is, did you enjoy yourself? Did you have fun? And when you create a space, it of course, the whole experience, right? There's so many factors that go into, a first time experience, and that's for sure another FaceTime Live for another day. But this is one of them. Like, this is one of the most impactful things, and this is typically, if churches allow their kids to be dropped off in a classroom, that is another way to have that first time impression. So I think it's great, and I love your thoughts around the design of the space and of that classroom, Kevin. It's fantastic. I'm thinking about don'ts, and I might be getting ahead of yourself, but I think of a project that we did was over the top amazing. We had layered designs everywhere. I mean, it was incredible, the layers of design work that we did. But the functionality of the room, there's a big miss. There was no space left for you being functional, whether it's for a whiteboard or for a projector. So for sure, some things to talk about there as well.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, that wasn't us though, right? We don't really have big misses. That was probably another company, I think.
Well, it wasn't our big miss. It was the miss that's what they wanted. That this particular church wanted this type of design, and we executed it, but we had major cautions. So, but that's what they wanted.
That's a great point. Is we went over the top, every wall, floor to ceiling. It was layered out, built out. And then they got out in there, and the teachers, the volunteers who are there every week, are like, hey, wait a second, like, I need to hang stuff on the walls, or I need to be able to change things up, and that there's just no opportunities for that. So maybe that's a great do as well, as make sure you're checking with the people who are going to be in those classrooms with the kiddos for that hour or so, right? I mean, they're the ones who are going to understand that space from a functional standpoint better than anybody else. So yeah, that's a great call out too. All right. This is something I see a lot too. and I put it as number 3 is embrace your architectural uniqueness. So and this would be more for churches, maybe in established buildings or older buildings. And so many times we go in there and, there might be, they're older buildings. So there's always some interesting things going on. And so like this one, for example, and you have this right here and it's like, oh, it's so annoying. Like, how do we take that out? Or, you have these windows insets and just a lot of times it's our clients start with like, how do we get rid of that, right? And I would say a do is embrace your architectural uniqueness. And a don't would be, trying to kind of cut it back to just 4 bare kind of sterile walls, right? And so if I'm looking at this classroom and, let's just say, for example, we're going to go as minimal as possible in here, right? So, I mean, the great carpet. I think the color palette, it's kind of a light gray, almost white. I mean, that's kind of trending for sure, right? So it's a great starting point. But obviously with the TV and all the stuff going on, we're making this wall a focal point. They have these picnic tables in here. I'm just going to start pulling some colors off of there. Uh-oh. Nope. Hold on. There we go. Okay. See what we can make happen here. Just give me 1 second. And again, we don't need to go primary. Like those picnic tables have primary colors. Like probably, again, it all depends on the look and the feel. A lot of times, again, if we want the space to be kind of dialed back, a little more of a space where the kids can kind of relax and settle in, maybe we're going to kind of dial back that blue a little bit, make it a little more muted. But that, I'm going to say too, right? Instead of trying to get rid of or ignore what I would call an interesting architectural element, and I'm going to embrace that. And I'm going to, we could do another color, I guess, on top of that. But again, we would just, if we want a little bit of that sophisticated but playful, with some of the other toys and picnic tables, we don't need a whole lot of extra color in here, right? And so, I'm going to say this window inset as well. Those are sometimes great opportunities to add a little color, a little pop of color without going crazy, right? So in this classroom, it's a smaller classroom. There's going to be a lot going on in here. So you don't need to do a whole lot on top of it, right? It's just looking for those opportunities to add some pops of color. Great starting point is always that focal wall color. And then just some of those interesting architectural elements, right? So even this right here, I think kind of makes this room ready. If I was, as we're working with the client on this, even if it's a smaller classroom, just even painting this kind of potentially could help with the function of the space, meaning what's happened on this side versus this side, right? So, maybe just with that divide, this is the side where the lesson happens. And then maybe on this side is where, the fun of the games or the hanging out before or after happens, right? We could keep going and, I guess we could add some, I think it'd be slowly kind of building up. Again, I don't necessarily do some crazy over the top floor to ceiling mural in here. But, we could do some tone on tone kind of stuff. I don't know, maybe some circles or something, some minimal sort of things if we wanted to.
Kevin, that brings up, and again, it's another great point when churches are looking at their church budgets and they have a budget to do some work. Where do they start? Again, our strong admonition is always check in, right? That's the first impact space. Make that over the top amazing, and then classrooms. It doesn't have to be very expensive. It's amazing what a coat of paint of a different color will do to enhance a space. And you haven't done any design in here other than that tone on tone you just referenced. But we're just talking paint. It already makes that space come alive in quite an amazing way.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't see the check-in space for the hallway for this, but yeah, like this base coat and this blue, like for sure wouldn't want this to come out of nowhere. Like it's something that would work with what's been established right out in the main area, and I'm really proud of Worlds of Wow and the way we've kind of set up our process is even in spaces where maybe we're not going to be doing a whole lot of whether it's 3D or wall covering or some sort of treatment. For us, it's looking at that whole kid space. And so even in a classroom, for example, where, maybe we're not going to do a whole lot, we're still going to make sure the colors are working with what's, the overall palette. And, if it's on the table, work with our clients to kind of help pick finishes and flooring and some of the, some of the seating or other elements that are going to be in there. Right. So absolutely.
A question that a viewer brought up, and by the way, today this is the Worlds of WOW team, Todd Parks and Kevin Cravens. We're talking all things design of classrooms and large group space. We'll get to the large group space here in just a bit and talk a little bit more about that. And of course, we're going to show a few examples of some projects we did that were just truly amazing. But a question came up with, with COVID, what materials should be used to be cleaned and sanitized? So just thinking of, even if it's wiping down, churches going through before they open up, wiping down all of their tables and desks and chairs, even walls. So just thinking of materials that we use. Kevin, maybe talk about the type of paint we use and what we recommend to be used to clean those.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna write down COVID. I'm also gonna write down boo, because boo COVID. Yeah, I think, what we're starting to see too is, that's a great thing, because obviously that ability to clean and keep things sanitized is going to be a big deal. So we're seeing that a lot more. So I would say for sure, hard plastics. So like, I think these picnic tables right here, right? These are great opportunities. Plastic. I mean, you can imagine it's going to be real easy to clean and sanitize that. I think probably staying away from any sort of woods is a big deal. I would say flooring in particular. We did carpet squares here. Certainly this was before all of that, but I think probably going to see more of a trend towards vinyl floorings, whether that's a tile or some sort of kind of wood plank look and feel. I think that's going to be a big deal as well. Something we've been talking about internally and we're kind of working on is, large group rooms a lot of times, client or some of the churches, where these different age groups are going to sit, right? And so a lot of times they use carpet circles or some sort of carpet element on the floor. And so we, I think with that in mind, we are working with some different flooring options that more have that are still mobile. You can pick up, move around, but have that kind of that harder, slicker surface that you can clean with, sanitizing wipes, right?
And then also too, when you're thinking of COVID, we're not experts in cleaning, other than here, if you do need to clean these surfaces, these are the types of materials to use. But of course, the CDC, when you're as a church and you're opening back up, our professional direction would be, defer to that, of course, to see what best practices they recommend for churches. And that can be different if it's a licensed preschool in your church, all types of things. So didn't want to get off that path too much. Kevin, I know we have a few minutes left, and I'm sure you have a few more things to talk about when it comes to classrooms, but we'll make sure that we talk about classrooms, and also want to just give some ideas guiding design principles for large group rooms as well.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, let's wrap it up there. And then, for sure. There's a reason I went to art school. I'm an artist and not a scientist or anything along those lines. So yeah, for sure. But I think those are trends of just those materials that are a little easier to clean is definitely something we're seeing. So let me, I think wrap up, let me show some large group rooms real fast. And I'm gonna wrap up with that classroom pictures we got from a client. But these would be two different large group rooms we've done in the past. And I think this would be kind of, what we see with large group rooms a lot of time. And again, it's understanding the function and the purpose and what you want. And I would say this one, on the, let me turn off some of this and see a little better. This is a little more dialed back, a little more sophisticated, a little more, focused on, sophisticated interior design kind of look. I mean, they have pops of color or whatnot, right? But it's, kind of a gray tones with some just intentional pops of color, right? So this is a space you can imagine could be for elementary kids, up to adults pretty easy, right? This is one, obviously, this is all for kids, right? Elementary, I think up to 8th grade maybe. And so this is, when you walk in here, you know who this is for, right? So a lot more energy, a lot more action going on. But both of them are, it's a lot of work to plan out. So it's understanding the function of the space. It's understanding who it's for. And, I think a big thing we see with large group rooms a lot of times too is, where the focal point's going to be in the large group room, right? And so, sometimes I have to say, like this one, it's kind of almost a blank canvas, right? There's a little going on, but this is a church where they're going to bring up their own props a lot of times. They're going to bring up their own stuff, and so they want that ability to kind of, make it their own on a weekly, monthly basis based off the series, right? And so maybe a little bit more of the focus is on the sidewalls. And if you were to go into these classrooms, pull out or turn to left, you see those. There's more going on in there, right? Versus this room where, I mean, it's a little bit, man, this whole room is, something's happening, right? But there definitely is a pretty defined look and feel and focal point on the stage, right? So even as you walk into this room, there's a lot going on, but, the end point is right there on the stage area. So I think it's kind of understanding your programming and who you are and how you guys want to do things. And it's a question of you want to spend those budget dollars on the stage area, or maybe you want to spend those budget dollars on the sidewalls, back wall, and maybe some of the other stuff going on.
Yeah, great point. I mean, we design for churches that were church plants that are moving into their first building, and we've designed, churches that are massive and have many, many campuses. And looking at that, it's to your point, Kevin, which is great, of what is going to be our focal point, and then let's maximize the design and the budget dollars there. Like,
yep.
There's some churches, they want a tricked out stage. We did a really cool project, and it's like a factory, and it's amazing, and the stage is tricked out, and that's always going to be like that. And there's other churches, like you referenced, they want to have the freedom to change that out however they want. And some churches that have the budget dollars, they're putting in immersive environments where the background can be changed. Maybe one week it's a camouflage theme, and the next week it is, a castle, or maybe it's going to the desert and they're talking about a biblical lesson. Maybe it's Moses. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ideas, and I think it's really understanding big picture. And again, we always love to start with the why, like what's the why behind the space, and that will drive the rest of the design in that room. So, great point. Great point.
That's one point. I'll wrap up with this classroom right here. But yeah, I think that's kind of been the recurring theme, no matter what space we're talking about or what topic we're talking about, whether it's in the home or at the church or whatever area of the church is, we're worlds of wow. I mean, we have the ability to wow and do something cool and have somebody look at it and literally say wow. But for us, it's important for sure to go beyond just something that looks cool and make sure that it's purposeful, that it has intention, that it syncs up with your brand and who you are and what you want to communicate. And ultimately for us, I think a personal mission of, man, we want to make sure these environments for churches are active participants in the work that God has inspired you to do to introduce kiddos to Jesus, right? So yeah, I think the recurring theme is just taking that step back and understanding the why. And so then whether it's kind of a more scaled back look and feel, or man, it's just like underwater adventure. It's, if you understand the why, it becomes less of maybe sometimes back and forth internally about what looks cool or what theme. If you understand the why, then that's kind of the driving force and can provide a little bit of direction and clarity for what we should be doing with the space. So, all right, so this classroom, it is, I don't have the picture over here, but it's actually, you kind of see it's actually 3 classrooms. So you got this classroom right here, kind of see that back there. There's a classroom right here, and then one over here. So they have all these half walls and openings. So this is, just looking at this real fast, we have a few minutes, but I think the goal here would be, if I walk in here, it's like, whoa, like don't know where to focus, all this stuff going on. So, man, my first goal, and I'm just going to assume maybe we're going to do, we're going to start with the color, and we can always build on top of that, right? So, see if we can make this work real fast and kind of dial this in a little bit. So maybe a disaster. I don't know. We'll see. But so I'm going to assume each one of these classrooms has this focal wall, right? So I'm going to make that one orange. I'm going to assume, yeah, like there's another focal wall of this classroom we're not quite seeing right here. I'm going to make that a lime green. And I feel like there's still something missing. Like all these half walls, we got to try and make sense. So I'm gonna try this and go back to my blue from earlier. I'm gonna take this wall section right here. Let's see. Do this. And again, you know, it might be looking different on screens. It might look like super primary. The goal isn't super primary, but you know, just have a few minutes. But I think definitely dialing back the color a little bit is always a good thing. Let's see.
Kevin, looking at the cubbies, would you, in your professional opinion, would your thought be, hey, let's take those guys down, or maybe move them somewhere else, or do something different? What are your thoughts there?
Again, I think it's understanding what needs to happen in the space. I know we were talking, you know, we work a lot with churches who have special needs ministries, and I guess just looking at those cubbies, something I loved that somebody had told us about a while ago is they actually, you know, put some of the elements up high, and then they have like, you know, pictures or labels of what those elements are. Sometimes, you know, they keep them in buckets, right? But they're elevated. But it was a great solution for maybe some kiddos that you know, kids communicate in different ways, not always just verbally, right? And some, you know, for whatever reason, can't communicate verbally, right? So I think if, you know, in a special needs ministry, having that stuff up high, that was a great opportunity to really be able to work with some kiddos who communicated visually, or couldn't communicate verbally, to be able to point and, you know, communicate what they wanted, right? And so it allowed that kiddo to kind of work on interactions with an adult. So again, I think it would, you know, be understanding what's happening in this room. But I think that's, you know, I wouldn't necessarily start with just ripping those down. Now, if, you know, the volunteers are clocking their heads on those or whatnot, you know, that might be something to take down. And I know I'd clock my head, so I might be a fan of taking those down. But I'm just gonna, yeah, I think right here. So let me talk about this and we can wrap it up. But so I'm gonna assume, yeah, there's 3 classrooms, right, in this kind of open space. And so you know, I think giving each classroom its own unique focal wall color makes each classroom kind of unique, right? And that's another opportunity to kind of communicate to visitors where they need to go without like going crazy. I think already, you know, your eyes are able to focus a little more when you walk into the space. I'm actually gonna make this wall blue as well.
So, Kevin, one of the things that I say too in consulting with churches about their space is that, you know, having a focal wall that's a different color in each classroom gives the illusion that you did a whole lot more, especially in classrooms, than you really did. But it's as you walk down, you're like, wow, there's a lot of color. Each wall is different. Again, it draws your eye to that focal wall, and I think using different colors in each classroom is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and it can communicate. You know, I mean, we've done it before where the focal wall color, the door jambs, the door itself are. And if you can imagine, you know, communicating to a new family, you know, we'll follow the green stripe down the hallway to the green door. Now you're in the green room. Again, even for some kiddos with some, you know, maybe some cognitive kind of processing issues, man, that kind of lowers their anxiety. Right. And just makes it real easy for them to be engaged with the space as well. So I think intentional color, again, taking it beyond like, let's just do a cool color, but just getting intentional with the color is a great way to get kids, you know, their imaginations activated. But so this real fast, you know, just intentionally, it was each focal wall in each classroom has its own color. So you've kind of like, now you've defined each space, even though it's an open area. And I think taking these kind of perpendicular walls and kind of having that blue base coat, I think kind of focuses the wall as well. So, you know, maybe those would be blue, you know, the kind of these walls going this way, they would remain that kind of light gray base coat. And then I think just even right there, it's anything we want to take out or remove or add any more theming, it's kind of just going up from there. But there you go.
Yeah, Kevin, this is great. I mean, we're talking, these are some pretty basic principles and ideas. Obviously, as you had said earlier, our WOW team, I mean, we can trick out a space and do a lot of really, really cool, fun, and unique designs to them. And we do that for a number of churches. But again, it's for us would be, a conversation like this with a church would be, hey, let's understand your budget. That allows us to understand what we can and we can't do, and how do we address those areas. So I mean that's something we certainly have the capacity to do. We can trick these classrooms out to have multiple layers and have really, really cool designs. So that being said, we have next week we're entering the month of June, and so if you kind of roll out a little teaser, Kevin, of what our viewers can experience here in the next few weeks in June.
Yeah, no, I think we're really excited about this. We're going to focus in June on the other side of the WOW business, which is play, right? And so starting next week, we're going to talk about the value of play, and we're going to have literally the two leading experts in the country on the science and value of play. So Tom Norquist from PlayCore and then Dr. Stuart Brown. They're going to jump on and they're going to talk about the value of play and the importance of play, right? And it's going to be really good because I've learned a lot, still learning a lot, but just again, play goes beyond just burning energy, right? I mean, I got two boys, man. I'm glad sports are starting back up and they can go out on the soccer field and start burning some energy. But play has value beyond that, and it's just an essential part of our kiddos growing into healthy adults, right? And then we're gonna start there. We're gonna do some live designs like we've been doing with some of the classrooms, but we're gonna do it for play areas. We're gonna have Jenny Sumrell on. She's an inclusive play expert, so she's gonna talk about thinking about kids of all abilities and how we can get them all involved, right? And so for kids of all abilities, designing spaces where they have the opportunity to do life together. We're gonna talk compliance. We're gonna make that fun, I promise. But there's all kinds of codes, and if you don't know them, and without naming names, man, there's companies that will give you something and install something that's not up to code, and there's nothing less fun than getting shut down by the fire marshal because it's not up to code. Right, so we're going to talk that, just what you need to know, and first steps with that. And so we're gonna have a lot of fun. And play, play goes beyond just the kind of the outdoor playgrounds or the indoor playgrounds that we do. I think we're going to be able to circle back a lot to what we've been talking about with our environments and classrooms, and and I think just to wrap this up, put a bow on it, but when we talk about making spaces for kids, again, it doesn't have to be obnoxious, doesn't have to be crazy. It can be sophisticated and playful, but we're advocates for making sure that it's spaces that are for kids, even if they're supposed to be multi-use, because creating a playful mood in kids, creating joy in kids just has so many benefits. So we're really excited about the series coming up.
Yeah, I am as well. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to learn about that. And man, we have an amazing team of experts, not only from our corporate level all the way down to our director of operations and compliance and fun designs. So looking forward to that in June. Again, thanks for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you next Friday at 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time on the Worlds of WOW Facebook Live broadcast. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.